If you're already in market and you want to adopt subscriptions, just be really good to your existing user base. Just give them what they think they've bought, give them lifetime access if they were a one-time purchaser, let's say, or give them an opportunity, just keep rolling the way they are without kind of transition. And then focus your subscription opportunity on new users.
Welcome to Mobile Growth Pancakes, a podcast by StoreMaven. We break down how and why mobile apps grow. In each episode, we invite a mobile growth expert onto the show to break down a specific mobile growth strategy, how it worked, why it worked, and what they would do differently. I'm your host, Esther Shatz. Welcome to Mobile Growth and Pancakes. I'm super excited to be back after a little break to do maternity leave, and it's a great way to come back because I'm joined today by Dan Burcaw, CEO and co-founder of Nami. Dan, you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me and welcome back. As you mentioned, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Nami. We kind of come from a long legacy of being in the mobile space, doing some other companies and been around a long time. And what we're focused on at Nami is really trying to help people grow primarily their subscription revenue streams, but also one-time purchases as well. And, what we found, a decade or more into this mobile app economy, it's still pretty under-optimized. There's lots of opportunities still to grow. And so that's what we're trying to solve. I'm sure we'll get into more of it. But in a nutshell, we're just trying to help people grow.
Amazing. So before we get, heavy into subscriptions, can you talk through, you have a pretty interesting background into how you entered the mobile world. Can you talk through a little bit of your experience and how you arrived at the point of starting Nami?
Yeah. So, we don't have to go all the way back. Suffice to say, I've been playing with computers for a long time and kind of grew up with the early days of the internet and really self-taught. I don't spend most of my day today, these days in code, but nor am I really, trained to be a coder. But I did teach myself over time, the more of the technical aspects of computers and how they work. And after I graduated from university, I kind of had a choice. I had already been involved in a startup. We did some pretty crazy things. We put software on U.S. Navy nuclear submarines. We helped process images coming down from the Mars rover for NASA JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab. And so we just did a lot of interesting things. I was pretty young in those experiences. And so it was sort of like this crash course in, how crazy the world of entrepreneurship can be and what one can do even with like kind of no background or experience if they just find themselves in an interesting position. And so coming out of university, I sort of had this choice of, do I double down on technology in terms of, fostering these technical skills and kind of going down that route, or not? And, I kind of, because I was self-taught, I always sort of had this impression that I was not going to ever have the engineering skills that somebody who had gone to school for that, or had, I just figured there was going to be better engineers. So I actually had an opportunity to be recruited into Apple into an engineering role, and I just thought, why there's got to be better engineers than me. So I passed that opportunity up. But I was really fascinated in that period of time in what Apple was doing. Steve had just been back for a few years, and the company was really starting to turn around and get real momentum. So I knew I wanted to be involved in and around Apple some way. And so while I was applying to other kinds of positions and things, I just literally went down to my local Apple store, handed in an application. Next thing you know, I was a part-time retail specialist. I'd never worked a retail job in my life up to that point, and haven't again since. But one thing led to another, and a number of years go by, and I'm in a corporate position. I'm helping with the worldwide retail expansion. As went from just a few hundred stores to many more, and got to work closely with somebody who was a direct report of the head of retail And it was just a fascinating experience where I learned that Apple as a company doesn't just innovate in products. It really thinks about everything as an opportunity to innovate. There's tons of stories, but one that I'm pretty fond of is that I was in Cupertino, and they have where retail is based, or at least it was at the time. It was sort of off from the main campus, and they actually had a whole mock store where they prototyped, in physical scale, all sorts of things, not just displays and where products go, but like, what tile should we use for the floor, or what should the HVAC system look like, the part that you could actually see. And so all those decisions were being made kind of in a life scale. And, at the time, Steve Jobs would come once a week, and like him and Ron Johnson would just like go around the store and make decisions like they were making a decision about the next iPod or the next iPhone. So it's just, incredible to think about a company that's known for products, innovating in all these other ways that you wouldn't think about.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the things that that interests people about the world we're in terms of mobile growth, which is Apple is so incredibly thoughtful and brilliant in a lot of ways about everything they're doing with their products and how they market and how they brand. And then you come to the subscription side, which I could say from years back when we first started in kind of the realm of mobile growth, it felt a little bit like an afterthought, right? It wasn't something that was the biggest focus. And I think today probably you could speak a little more to this. Developers struggle. They struggle with finding the right ways to monetize and really tap into the store the way they would hope. So maybe you could talk through a little bit. I mean, I imagine Nami was started for a reason and out of a specific pain. Maybe you could talk about that a bit.
Yeah, and even just taking one step back from subscription for a second, I think that in a way, the idea and there's so much effort in the industry. Our industry is focused on acquisition, and if you think about it, in a way, even that's still an afterthought. I mean, we just now have the ability to do a custom product page where we can give one, user cohort a different way into the app than, I mean, that's what landing pages are on the web. And we've had those for however long.
The most basic, exactly. The most basic thing, customize a user flow, only happened a month ago, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And then we can now do, product page optimization. So, and that's literally talking about the top of the funnel. Well, maybe not the tippy top, but pretty far up there. And so I think that a lot of this, even before you figure out, should I monetize? How should I monetize? Should I do ads? Should I do a blend? Should I do subscription? Is still just trying to figure out how do we get audience that is growing. That's important. But B, sort of finding the right audience and trying messaging that resonates with them, so that we're not, downstream fighting this churn problem with push notifying people and over, emailing because we're just trying to claw people back that we've acquired. And that's back to your question of what's the origin story, is that my co-founder and I, we built one of the first companies in push notification. We were really focused on, use cases like breaking news and sports scores that, for the most part, if you receive an alert like that on your phone, you kind of want it, right? Our technology got acquired. We ended up at Oracle. We plugged that push engine into a product called the Oracle Marketing Cloud. And what we saw was how marketers started to think about push technology. And unfortunately, or fortunately, it started to become a tool for, promotions and churn and some of these things. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that it ends up being this blunt instrument that if you're not very, very careful, you can you have the opposite effect of what you're trying to have with your user. So we wanted to sort of say, if there's a way that we can help people be more efficient with revenue, where they don't have to resort to some of these tools too much, right? Push is still part of the mix, email is still part of the mix, but it should be a balanced part of the story. then that would be a win. And then the second thing we also saw that, especially on the monetization side, especially in subscription, we saw a lot of kind of history repeating itself, which was in push. It was originally the developers that were implementing and adopting and utilizing and building APIs. And then eventually what happened was the marketing teams took over and started driving features, started driving, how to measure. And it just a totally different product emerged, right? When you saw those personas shift. And so what's happening in subscription monetization now, and even, with the features we talked about with product pages, is that I feel like up to this point in the app story, so much has been home built or homegrown, or maybe that's the wrong way to put it, controlled by developers. You want to make a change to your subscription paywall? Well, that's going to be an app update. And so there was a limit to what the non-technical people how deep in the funnel the non-technical people in the flow could manage and control. And it kind of ended at those store pages. So what we want to do is, punch a hole through the flow and give the non-technical personas control of the paywall. By the way, if you're going to have multiple product pages, you might as well have multiple paywalls that are aligned to the different messaging that you're trying out, or different acquisition campaigns that you're running, and so on. And so, that's a long answer to the origin story, but it was a number of themes coming together around the personas that needed to be able to take control of these things, how hard subscriptions was and how unoptimized it was, and just our experience with over messaging, and maybe we could play a little bit of a role to tamp down on that a little bit.
So I love that I think it's something that we've experienced a lot as well on our side, this idea that you kind of have marketers and then you have developers, and there's been this like division, and it really, it constantly comes into conflict. And for the marketer, there's so much pain right now because everything has been, I think you're completely right, has been, kind of focused around the developer, and even things like analytics and understanding, further down the line, I brought these users in. Are they actually doing anything for me? Do they, did they download and call it a day? Are they responding? Are they the type of user we brought in? We lose a lot of that. Certainly in a post iOS 14.5 world, a lot of that gets lost. So, talk me through the subscription model a little bit. What are the advantages for an app developer of using subscription model as opposed to advertising, pure in-app purchase? Why would somebody consider a subscription?
Well, it's the becoming the dominant driver of growth across the store. So in every category, even categories like games, there's a move towards subscription. So if maybe the reason to do it isn't just because everybody else is doing it. However, consumers are getting used to the idea of a subscription model. So it's part of the mix. It's not some foreign object that you only see once in a blue moon. So that's important. Consumer behavior is, moving there. Certainly Apple and Google are encouraging developers to adopt the model. So that's really, important, because as they make editorial decisions, for example, that's going to matter. It's not to say they don't promote apps that have ads only or apps that have in-app purchases, but certainly adopting things that are aligned is important as well. And it's, really, it comes down to sustainability. It's still very expensive to build, manage, operate, grow a mobile property. And it's a tremendous investment over time. And if you're dependent on in-app purchases, one-time purchases, it works really well in games because in a lot of ways, those in-app purchases behave like subscriptions, right? The users are coming back and buying multiple times. But in other categories, in non-gaming categories, that mechanic usually doesn't exist. And so subscriptions offers an opportunity for you to create value over time. And then there's a value exchange over time, which is really important. Just more sustainability for the publisher, But then the user's expectations are different too. And so that's good. That's kind of healthy. I mean, if somebody comes in and they're willing to pay for a few months and then like something changes in the product and they're starting to question that, like you kind of want to know that, right? And then bring that feedback back into the product. So I think it's a really healthy model, in spite of sort of the sentiment out there of subscription fatigue and some of those things that you see in the press. I do think it's a win-win model for consumers and publishers.
Makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about subscription fatigue. I think there is that fear, right? Of if I'm forcing my users into a commitment, do I lose users that would have stuck with me if I didn't make it so official, if I kind of threw it in bit by bit. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you're right, exactly right. Like, so what you're also sort of talking about there is, you have to get into the subscription in order to use the product. And in some categories, health and fitness being one, I mean, that's very common. You start a free trial. If you don't convert from free to paid, well, guess what? You don't get to work out. So very common there. In other categories, you see a little bit more of a freemium type model where there is some access, some things you can do, but then if you want to do more, then maybe you have to participate in the subscription. I think there's a opportunity to do kind of all these things in a way, where, for example, you offer the lifetime access that's a one-time purchase for a certain type of demographic that would just prefer to pay once and not do the subscription. Or you have little appetizers, little entrees in the application where you're able to move them from free to paid, maybe through a one-time purchase. But then from there, the ultimate goal might be to get them into the subscription. But it's also trying to find users, and I say that, and it sounds like you're trying to trick users into the subscription. But really, what it is, it's about market segmentation. You're trying to find the users that are the right fit for the subscription, but also finding, well, what's the opportunity for those users that aren't the right fit? Is there an opportunity? Maybe the answer is no. If there's an opportunity for a light experience that's got some value exchange, great. Or maybe there's a certain cohort of your users that you do want into the product for a variety of reasons, and you're okay with ad supported for those people. So subscription is never going to be right for everybody, and I think that is a mistake, a mentality mistake that sometimes people make, where they are jamming a lot of users through the acquisition funnel, and they want to get them all converted into subscriptions, but what they're missing is that it's not going to be right for everybody.
So how do you do that process of identifying who makes sense for a subscription? Is it a persona? Is it behavior based? How do you kind of let's say we're approaching this in a sophisticated way and kind of getting the understanding of, I want some people in my subscription model who will be lucrative there, other people I need to nurture in a different way. How do you get there? How do you find those answers?
Well, it's unfortunately, there's a few pieces that have to come together. It's not so easy to just like, boom, here's your cohort of potential subscribers. Here's your cohort of ad supported. Part of it's behavioral. You do have to have some general behavioral analytics to understand what different cohorts of users are doing. And there's casual users. And you have to make a decision of, okay, here's what a casual user looks like. Maybe they're not in the app every day. That's okay. Maybe they're in once a month. What do we want to do to serve that audience? Do we want to do anything? So you sort of have to understand that they exist and decide what to do with it. But then also you have to understand what channels are driving acquisition, what types of those user groups from the behavioral perspective exist, and what channels are they coming from, and then what do you want to do about that? Because you may spend a lot of money driving those casual users who may not generate the revenue that you're looking for because they might not be a good fit for the subscription. So then the question would be, maybe you're okay having those users, but you're not willing to pay for it through paid acquisition. If they come across you organically, fine, you have an opportunity. Or if your CPM is such that it does become worth it. So you have to understand the behavioral piece and the cohorting there, but you also have to understand, connect the dots on the acquisition side. Because if you can't do that, then most apps out there aren't reliant only on organic for acquisition, right? So that's the second piece. And then from the A/B testing perspective, I do think there's lots of opportunities to test all sorts of things, from what we talked about earlier, product page optimization, paywall optimization. But those other threads have to run through it. So I think a lot of people maybe might A/B test without a kind of goal in mind. So what are you trying to test? What are you trying to determine? Not just like which one of these things has the best performance, because if you don't know what all the inputs are and you're trying to get an answer, well, that answer might be answering the question about an audience that you're not necessarily focused on, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think the example I use a lot, when I'm thinking about that, is for slots games, let's say.
Yeah.
Free coin messaging almost always will improve your conversion rate. People love free coins, but free coin users tend to play until their free coins run out, and then they run over to the next game. So you're not actually monetizing off of any of those users. So you'll see, if you're running a kind of a very simple on the surface test, you'll say, great, I found my next creative, I found my messaging, we're good to go. Down the line, all of a sudden you start losing out on your income and you realize you optimized for the wrong group. So I think it's really important what you're saying, is this idea of tying my acquisition funnels. I mean, I'd say even organic at some point comes through some kind of acquisition, right? Like nobody wakes up one morning and thinks, hey, here's the name of an app, I'm going to go download it. Like, something went in there, and to be able to tie that back and see, what is, not just is somebody subscribing, but are they subscribing well? Do I keep them? Do they seem to be using? Do they seem to be getting value? I think it's super important. And, I imagine it's gotten more challenging with things like the deprecation of IDFA and new privacy that's continued to be rolled out. Is that something that you guys have kind of faced? Is there a good way to make sure that you're not losing the tie-in on these funnels when you're looking at optimizing your subscriptions?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. Although I think it's an opportunity too, because if you think about in the world where IDFA is prolific, think about the number of tools that even a medium-sized app publisher would need to have in place to connect all those dots. Yes, they had IDFA to match and do all the fun identity stuff, but you've got attribution tools, you've got analytics tools, you've got a customer data platform to move all the data around. You've got actually multiple analytics tools probably, and so and I'm probably missing a bunch of stuff in the ad stack, and so it's just a lot, right? Okay, so we don't have IDFA, or the opt-in rates are so low that let's just pretend we don't have it. Maybe it just means that we should be thinking a little bit differently about how we want to glean some insights. For example, it's pretty common on the web to, if somebody signs up for a SaaS product, to just ask them how they found out about the product, right? I understand why we don't want to do that in mobile, because the drop off and the friction on the sign up flows is pretty steep. But maybe we should just try some things like that, like surveying our users and finding very quick UI patterns that allow us to do that, so that we can glean insights to personalize the experience. So I think people are willing to share, right?
I mean, I'd imagine this kind of ties into when you get somebody who's committed enough to subscribe, but kind of tying in a little bit about what brought them there. That might be a time when you get somebody who's more willing than you would expect. It's not a first-time user who's about to investigate. It's somebody who's saying, yeah, I'm ready. I'm putting my credit card down. I like this. I think maybe there is a friendliness that you can take advantage of there if they remember, depending how long your kind of model goes of freemium and what have you. But it's an interesting thought.
Yeah, it's not perfect, right? But I guess what I'm just getting at is, like, we try to use technology to answer some of these questions, and it's that IDFA already isn't what isn't perfect, even when you have it. And there's a lag time. And like I said, you need all these different tools and stitching it all together. And however, the flip side is it provides insight. And what do we all want more of? We want more insights. And so I think that part of the also related to this subject is that oftentimes people don't know what to do next, right? Okay, I could go and, really focus on ASO for a while, or I could go and work on the custom product pages and do optimization there. Like, what should I literally do next to have the most impact on mobile growth? And I do think that that's where sometimes we get that's where some of these stitching together these solutions try to promise that they're the answer to this problem, but a lot of them aren't really telling you what to do next. They're just helping you have more data to comb through.
That's a great point. I mean, I think we tend to fall back on this idea that if we have data, we're covered, like we have the data, so we should have the answers, but actually, is this data the answer? Is this data teaching us what we need to do? I mean, I think that's it's a security blanket, right? Like, we're collecting the analytics, so we're okay. But what do we actually do with that? Are we doing the right thing with it? Probably not in many cases.
Well, and back to the developer marketer divide, not to simplify the personas too much, because there's lots of different types of developers, a lot of different people in growth teams and marketing teams. But, we also have to collect analytics the right way to get the insights that we are looking for. So sometimes, these general purpose analytics solutions where you're tagging events and doing these things, you end up not getting what you need. So guess what? You put in a different package that's answering a different, promising to answer a different question. And so now developers are spending their time maintaining analytics implementation, 3 different analytics implementations, all providing some different slice. And guess what? Developers just want to work on the core experience most of the time. And so that can be frustrating too, is that, and I think part of it is because if the developer doesn't know what question is trying to be answered, and they're just taking a requirements document that says, hey, I need to know anytime somebody taps this button or, makes it to the sign up form or creates an account, without really understanding the intent, sometimes you're just going through a lot of kind of pain to not get the answers you want.
You can add in the extra layer of sometimes you have, the developer who doesn't understand the business need that's driven it, the marketer who doesn't know how to access, the data points, and the analyst in the middle who kind of gets a requirement from each side to produce a report to send to, a report to send to this side and this side. And then you have just that, kind of telephone game of what are you actually getting back in the end, and is it the answer to the business question that you needed?
Meanwhile, we're 2 quarters down the road and we haven't grown.
Yeah, exactly. Or our revenues are going down and we have no idea why. 100%. I mean, I'm sure this is going to be hard to answer because, like you said, the right kind of subscription is based on type of app, on type of user. I actually remember you brought up fitness, that it's kind of an easy factor of either you get it or you don't. I remember talking to somebody from 8Fit a little while ago, and they were saying it might be worth, sometimes we see more value out of putting the subscription before somebody even has a chance to get addicted, because it forces them to use the app. It basically filters them out from the very beginning, and they were able to see, I think it's counterintuitive to what a lot of people would think, but it worked out well, in certain cases of actually just keeping committed users and kind of forcing them into a process. Would you say there's kind of an overall, this is the mistake that we see people making when it comes to subscription? This is something that people are doing and we know it's wrong, or is it just too industry and case specific to be able to say?
I think there are common patterns of mistakes. They're not, all the time. By the way, in that fitness example, the other thing is if somebody's downloading a fitness app, there's some level of internal drive, motivation that's like, hey, I need to work out more. I want to get fit. And so by prompting them into a trial right out of the gate, you're actually aligned with them. They want to do the thing. And so it's easier in that context, I think, than if it's, a weather app or something in food, and where it's like, yeah, maybe there's a reason you downloaded it, but it wasn't, it wasn't tied to this real strong need to, make a life change, if that makes sense. So anyway, I think that that's a unique pattern of health and fitness. Common mistakes. I mean, one of the common mistakes that we see is that you do spend all your time on the product pages and the marketing and in the collateral, and have these beautiful demo videos, and you spend so much on great marketing. But then when the user gets to that subscription upsell paywall, there's no marketing. It's not designed. It's not particularly attractive. It's just information. It's kind of intimidating. It's kind of like, oh man, another one of these. And instead of looking at it as like, this is another marketing opportunity to literally inspire your user to do the thing that you want them to do. And so that's pretty common. I think generally speaking, these things are way behind what people do on the web for similar types of products. Not similar types of products, similar types of business models. So that's one. I think another thing is it's pretty common to just look at your peer set, your sort of competitive set around pricing and also things like paywall, and just sort of say, well, it must be working for them. So these are the price points. This is how I'll message it. And, I think the back to what we started with, some of this stuff is an afterthought from the platform providers all the way down. And so if you're only looking at what others are doing as an example of best practice, it's not to say there's not best practice there, but it doesn't mean that we've reached the optimized state. It just means that, hey, a pretty good app is doing a pretty good job, but there's probably a lot of opportunity to do much better. 8Fit's a great example of one that has done a really fabulous job, but that doesn't mean there's not, plenty more upside to be inventive. And so I think, and the other thing is 8Fit, as an example, may have arrived at certain decisions on pricing or how they market, what their funnel is, and it's based upon their learnings, let's say. I don't know that to be fact, but I assume it is. So if some new entrant in that category or some competitor of 8Fit goes and looks at what they're doing and just mimics without understanding how they arrived at that decision, then you're not actually getting yourself into a position to have the foundational knowledge to know where to go kind of next and how to optimize. So kind of getting back to the basics of how to package a product, pricing, messaging, basically marketing 101, I think is sort of, I think there's an opportunity there for folks to just literally kind of go back to 1 to go to 10, instead of just always looking at the peer groups.
Yeah, I love that. I think you just reminded me of in the early days of the App Store, you saw this trend in app icons for mid-core games. It was all a screaming man with like spit coming out of his mouth. And if you started to drill into why this was everybody's icon, it was like, well, Supercell do it. That's Clash of Clans. That's what Clash of Clans do. And you go all the way back to Supercell, and Supercell happens to have amazing characters. Like they really develop them out. They do commercials. They have humor, and that's everywhere. And nobody else had that anywhere. So like, it was just this like, well, Supercell do it, and it worked with no connection to, but it only works for Supercell because they have this kind of character side. And now what I'm basically kind of communicating is I'm another ripoff of Supercell, and once developers started changing that and approaching, they found really interesting kind of shifts. So I totally agree. I think, and I'm even thinking back to apps I use. There's like a standard, okay, you've done this for 7 days now. Here's how much it should cost. And here's that. And there's not really that kind of consideration of, but who are you as an app versus, just because you're in a space where somebody popular has done something else, do you have that same brand recognition? Do you have that same product? Definitely not. So I think that's a great point. Let's kind of end this section off with, if you're an app developer and you're looking to start exploring a subscription model, how do you begin that process? What should I do? How do I think about it? What background do I need to do?
Yeah. Great question. So I think part of it depends on, are you in market already? or you're not in market. If you're in market with something, you kind of have to decide, okay, am I going to, what am I going to do for my current users? Right. There's a lot of agita out there around apps that have transitioned to the subscription model. So I think if you're already in market and you want to adopt subscriptions, just be really good to your existing user base. Just give them what they think they've bought, give them lifetime access. If they were a one-time purchaser, let's say, or give them an opportunity, just keep rolling the way they are without kind of transition, and then focus your subscription opportunity on new users. Because otherwise you're just kind of spending a customer service. You're spending your brand currency on customer service and trying to really just, you're going to not get ahead of it because you'll think everybody will just be fine with it. And then you'll have backlash. So it's just better to just treat existing users really well and adopt the model for new users. Now, if you are a brand new app or one that isn't monetizing yet, then I think really what it comes down to is just start and kind of don't get too hung up on the prices and the plans and the exact kind of mix of it. Have a mindset that it's the starting of the learning. It's not where you're going to end. And that's back to what we just talked about, where a lot of people just look at the competitive set and then they never change. They literally have the same prices they did, 5 years ago or 2 years ago. They've never changed how they're marketing the subscription. And everything else around that is changing. They're trying things all around except for that. And so I think it's important to have a mindset and then make investments that are about flexibility. So for example, I'll do a minor plug. We make it really easy to adopt the model, but then to turn the marketing, asset, the paywall, into a thing that's controlled by a CMS. So that somebody can just go in and say, you know what, that monthly plan, we just didn't get it right. Let's just make a change. And it doesn't affect anybody that's currently subscribed. It's just about new subscribers. Let's not offer the monthly plan. Let's offer them the weekly plan. And I'm not saying that that's the best practice. I'm just saying that you can make changes. Just go make a change and learn. And if that doesn't work, try something new and really just treat it as a canvas that's never finished and that is just opportunity to learn. So I think that's just really important. So that's what I'd advise.
Amazing. Yeah, I think, overall, it makes total sense. People are treating paywall as not, a marketing asset and is not part of the product. And it's just kind of in that limbo when it seems like it's, the way you describe it, it's lower risk than even updating your product because you're not going to piss your existing users off because it's not affecting them. It's just, seeing what's happening for the next round. And you can just iterate and iterate until you get it, to a place where it's comfortable for now until your metrics start to show you that it's time to go back to the drawing board. So I love that. It sounds so simple, but I think it's just not being thought of in that way. All right, you ready for the quick fire round?
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, here we go. Okay, it's not that hard. If you could give just one tip to somebody, who's just entering into the world of mobile growth and marketing, what would it be?
This might be controversial. I just don't think there's really a lot of experts in the field. I mean, I think there's people that have been around a while or people that are, doing interesting things, but I think it's an opportunity for real thought leadership and innovators. And so that's not to offend anybody that is a mobile growth person and has a lot of experience there, but it's just to say that if you're new, I just think it's such a early field, still young, full of opportunity for somebody to just really be inventive and set that new standard of everybody's going to want to copy you because that was such a great idea or a great case study of how to get to a great place by iterating over time.
Amazing. Favorite mobile growth resource?
Probably Twitter. I know that's not a single resource, but the thing is that I think you just see what people across the spectrum are doing and thinking about, from little, one person outfits to, larger companies that are doing things, and where the technology is kind of shifting, and where the innovation is, and what's getting people excited. And so sometimes I think that you just gotta have to immerse in things like that. I'll stick with that answer.
I like it. It aligns well with your first answer too. Person in the industry that you'd most want to take for lunch, and why?
Ooh, person to take the lunch, and why? Oh man, that's a really, really difficult question. It would probably be somebody at a company like Netflix, who really is a well-oiled machine when it comes to this stuff. But they also have made some really tough choices around how their mobile products work, what you can and can't do, for example, purchases. And I just think that you would mine just a tremendous amount of that insight that isn't out there, because nobody operates at a scale like that. There are not very many companies operate at a scale like that. So, somebody that's on the growth team at a Netflix class company or a Hulu class company, I think would be real fascinating.
Okay, if you thought that one was hard, this is our hardest, which is, what is your favorite flavor of pancake?
Probably sweet potato.
Sweet potato. Good answer. That's out there.
Sweet potato, chocolate chips. I think you combine those.
If you ever make it out to Tel Aviv, there's a really good sweet potato pancake in Tel Aviv. So just saying, if it wasn't on your list already, slot it in, because you get the pancake there. All right, amazing. Dan, where can people find you if they want to learn more, hear what you're talking about?
Sure. 2 places. One, I'm on Twitter. My last name, Burcaw, is my handle. And the company, we're on all the places, but easiest is just go to the website, Nami.ml. Nami is like tsunami, NAMI.ml.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thanks so much.
And that was Mobile Growth and Pancakes. To find out more about StoreMaven and how we can improve App Store performance, visit storemaven.com. And then make sure to search for Mobile Growth and Pancakes in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at StoreMaven, thanks for listening.